largest event we've ever had.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see. We get a little glimpse of the exact decks both of these players will be piloting for our Swiss round 5. Scott Burgess is playing that new archetype build of the Iron Hands EX, Iron Crown EX, up against Fabien Pujol's Gardevoir here, Mike.
Well, historically, Iron Hands was a very good card into Gardevoir decks. So now that you've got a deck built fully around Iron Hands, does that favor Scott here over the Gardevoir?
I mean, we spoke about earlier about how quick the format was with certain Pokemon just swinging away for lots of damage, lots of prize taking as soon as possible. And that's what this deck does, right? Iron Hands with Ampu very much is already taking additional prizes just by swinging away 120 damage base. But that Iron Crown EX with that Cobalt Command ability, able to start ramping up the damage and maybe start stretching for maybe larger HP Pokemon. Fabien's going to have to try and got his work cut out for him, I should say, because he does start off the game with a lot of lower HP Pokemon, and that's where Scott can try and capitalize.
It's not just at the start. A lot of those will be sticking around for the rest of the game. So with the counter catchers being in high counts in Iron Hands deck, if it ever gets behind, it can start to come back and take a lot of prize cards. And of course, the tools being a massive part of both decks. I think that's something to look out for, is the battle of the tools and whether a town store comes into play, because it could help out both sides.
Yeah, it's really interesting now. We do get a glimpse of the prizes here. Nothing too crazy on Scott's side, just the one curlier on Fabien, that Screamtail as well. But I think we're going to get, hopefully, a good game here with nothing too crazy prized on both sides of the board.
Oh, I love the poker gear there. There's the Heart Gold Soul Silver. I think so. That's a lovely artwork from back in the day. That's one of the beautiful things we have at these events. Everyone choosing their own style, picking their favorite artworks of all the cards. And now we'll see whether Fabien does not look confident with the Iron Hands matchup.
There's the fist bump. We do have now us kicking us off. It looks like Scott will be starting things off here with the top card draw, as he does double checks.
Oh, the Klefki.
Yeah.
Oh, I was speaking to Ethan, and he was talking me through the Gardevoir deck, and he was saying the Klefki is an amazing start for this particular matchup. You know why?
Go on, you enlighten me.
So the Klefki turns off the Iron Crown, so it means that the Miraidon doesn't get an early knockout, because it takes away that damage increase for the Miraidon's first attack. And so consequently, they have to go through 2 Miraidon attacks or then use an Iron Crowns to finish off an already damaged attacker.
Yeah, great insight there. Thank you very much. I had the pleasure of playing against a little bit of a similar archetype yesterday, or sort of the day before, just to kind of get myself in the mood to seeing how Gardevoir plays out nowadays, because everything's changed for it, of course. It's one of those decks that has been impacted by rotation. As we do see Scott here, just kicking things off, does get the Iron Hands EX on the board with an NG attachment, and sometimes that's just all you really need for turn 1.
Exactly, and you know, the Gardevoir deck has changed in the sense that it's now more disruptive than ever. Before, you could set up multiple attackers, and your disruption was purely on hand. You could use the Iron Node to disrupt their hand, and then outside of that, you would attack with some of the strongest attacks in the game. Whereas now you've got things like Klefki, Fluttermane, Mimikyu to try and counter specific archetypes. And with this matchup, the Mimikyu can be good there to take away the Iron Hand's potential attacks, and then the Klefki, as we mentioned, to reduce the Miraidon's damage. Yeah,
just those opportunities, whilst utilizing some of those sort of more disruptive Pokemon in the active spot. So, of course, with Klefki being able to use Mischievous Lock in the active spot, basic Pokemon in play do not have any abilities except Klefki's Mischievous Lock. With Fluttermane in the active spot, there's an opportunity to try and slow down the abilities of the opponent's active Pokemon as well. And then it's just utilizing some of those TM evolution cards and maybe start building up your board whilst you're gaining additional turns where you can.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole plan with the Klefki. Gain a few additional turns, and if you can, you're in a very strong spot to trade well into the Iron Hands. Iron Hands can take 2 prizes every turn, and if you're knocking them back out, you'll be doing the same thing.
And there we are. There's the instant attachment of the TM machine evolution. Those 2 routes are going straight up to Curliers with that fantastic refinement ability, and it's back over to Scott here once Fabien just quickly finishes up his shuffle, and of course the TM evolution will be discarded.
Yeah, there's not much needed to get this deck going for Scott. The Arven will find the Techno Raider and the Future Booster Energy Capsule, which can allow you to get that Miraidon attack off as long as there's an energy in hand, and I assume Scott would have one as he's already attached for turn, so is likely to be holding on to one here.
Yeah, and if Scott's able to sort of progress and get these energies attached to the Iron Hands EX as soon as possible, it starts to put Fabien on a bit of a clock. You know, it's then just saying, well, I'm going to be taking 2 prior knockouts every turn if you can't deal with this Iron Hands EX in the active spot. And I'm also just going to be powering up and giving it a boost in damage as well as a heavy baton. Oh, no, it's not, sorry, it's the Future Booster Capsule that's been selected there with the... with the
Arven there.
Yeah, by the Arven, sorry.
Yeah, so it is interesting. There was no energy left in Scott's hand. So I'm wondering now whether that means that he's going to just try and power up an Iron Hands and swing with that. But yeah, the hand is looking quite small.
There's the Electric Generator. Big. First 2 cards, 3, 4.
Oh, no energy there.
Considering only 1 energy is on the field of play right now. Bit of a miss there from Scott.
I mean, is there some tough prizes? I'm not sure if Scott's playing around particularly challenging start here, maybe just missequence, but for Fabien, this is the dream scenario, and if there was a Miraidon prize, then the heavy ball would do exactly what they need.
No, I don't believe there was one. No targets available there for Scott, but does get a chance to double check.
Yeah, I think maybe that attachment onto the Iron Hands was just the early struggle there, and that's going to be a pass, and with very little energy on board, Iron Crown in the active spot, this is now a chance for Fabien to start accelerating ahead. Yeah,
a chance to capitalize on that slow start from Scott. Refinements there, already utilized. Not able to use concealed cards. I don't think there's a psychic energy in hand. It's a bit of a shame. But Gardevoir EX evolved up now, retreat into the Gardevoir EX, capable of using Psychic Embrace. We've seen it many times before now. As often as you like attaching a psychic energy from your discard pile, you do deal 2 damage counters on yourself for each energy, and it's going to be start swinging away on the Iron Crown EX, 190 damage, Miracle Force.
Top deck time now for Scott. What are they going to draw? Or is that just a Future Booster Energy Capsule? And that's not what you need right now. Need a little bit more. Oh, there's the Ino in hand.
Does have a way out. Does have a way to try and just get out of this potentially. Let's see what we can work with here, Scott.
Oh, this is going to be...
1 energy in hand. Can't quite notice what else there is going on.
Oh, these slow starts are one of the challenges for decks like Iron Hands.
Just a promotion of the other Iron Crown EX, just to try and soak up some damage here.
Not ideal.
Not ideal at all, as that Gardevoir gets another opportunity. There's the concealed cards, a fantastic card we've seen already throughout today.
I mean, with the Gardevoir EX, if Scott were to attack into the Gardevoir EX, then the Professor Turo's scenario could be used to pick it up and promote the next Gardevoir EX, and so you would be able to just chain that one particular attacker that can survive any attack of the Iron Hands deck.
Yeah, as Fabien does. Just use Buddy Poffin to get out another route here. Just continue to set up the board, prepare for any sort of actions from Scott's side following that Iono and just the energy attachment. Iono of his own.
I mean, this is the challenge when you don't get that Miraidon attack off at the start. You don't have that single prizer that you can just keep accelerating with, that if your opponent takes, you're not too fussed because then you just play 2 prizes for the rest of the game. So Scott now just trying to slowly power up the Iron Hands and maybe get a knockout with it on something smaller than the Gardevoir EX, but that again is asking quite a lot. With no knockouts being taken by Fabien, that means the counter catchers aren't live.
That Gardevoir right now on 250 HP could theoretically be within range of something like the arm press with some additional more damage modifiers in the deck as well. But if Fabien just sort of keeps swinging away at this Iron Crown EX, there's ways for Fabien to maybe just utilize some of his damage counter drop attacks, like from that Mimikyu, for example.
Yeah, and just finish off multiple Pokemon at the same time.
Yeah, that Ghost Eye attack where you can put 7 damage counters. Oh, it's on your actives, apologies. But you've also got
Flutter
Main 90 and 20 onto the bench. Scream Tail here, we're going to see some swinging away, sniping onto the bench, or very likely.
Okay, just taking away that Iron Crown, that's going to make it even harder to knock out something like the Guard of War EX, but it does leave a 1 prize in the active. So now, if Scott starts taking knockouts, and Fabien can return those knockouts, Fabien is on the first of the 2-2-2 race that we're likely to see here. And without much energy in play, it's going to be much harder for Scott to chain those attacks.
Not too sure what else is going on in Scott's hand at the moment. A Techno Radar being played. Looks like a discard of a Lightning Energy. Opportunity to grab some further future Pokemon.
I mean, coming into this, I thought this was heavily in favor of Iron Hands, but you can see the disruptive potential of the Gardevoir deck now with the Klefki, with the Fluttermane, with the Mimikyu. It really forces some unusual routes. And you forget how big Gardevoir EX is. In a lot of matches, that's your liability, but in this particular match, it's a Pokemon that's really hard to knock out.
Yeah, 100%. And even with the sort of 6 damage counters on it, from that Psychic Embrace, it's still a real big stretch to hit to 250. I mean, considering it's 160 base for the arm press, additional 20 damage for each of the Iron Crown EXs from that Cobalt command. As we do see a Miraidon come down here, is there a way to switch out of the active spot here? Otherwise, we're going to see that Scream Tail continue to just keep swinging away. Research in hand.
Ooh. Gonna have to try and find a Future Booster Energy Capsule. And the one question with the Iron Hands is always about which ace spec does it play. And I think for many people, it started off as the obvious choice was the Reboot Pod, but then Prime Catcher started to become more popular.
Yeah, because you just want to be targeting down sort of those lower HP Pokemon, easier to take out, to take 2 prizes, or maybe even stretch sometimes to something like a Luminion V, for example, something weak to Lightning. And this is where the Electric Generator has hit, does have it now powered up and ready to go. It's just about whether Scott can find a way to remove the Iron Crown EX from the active position so that he can start just applying some pressure on Fabien's board.
I think we saw the Prime Catcher, so that would be a way to switch it. And then I think the real question here is, do you have that heavy baton to be able to retain the energy? So we'll see there, the Prime Catcher comes down. Which target would you like to go for here? That is always the question. Yeah. And it will be that Curlier, such an important part of the draw engine of Gardevoir.
Yeah, just kind of removing the opportunity for Fabien to keep drawing. Does have the routes ready as well. And there's the announcement of the Amp You Very Much for 2 prizes there from Scott. So leveling the game, as it were, as the Gardevoir EX is promoted to the active spot. Does have an energy already attached to it, so can just maneuver through an attachment and or with Psychic Embrace before moving to the right attacker of choice.
There we see the Drifloon, the new high damage output attacker for Gardevoir. Previously we had Zacian V and the Gardevoir with Shiny Arcana ability. Those were both great attackers in this deck, but after losing them, having to find a new way to hit those high damage outputs, Drifloon with HP increasing tool cards has filled that gap in Gardevoir.
Yeah, Drifloon got a lot of sort of traction early on in sort of some Gardevoir lists right at the start before realizing, well, we could just keep using those Gardevoirs to keep drawing cards with Shining Arcana, and Zacian V was a perfect sort of closer, as it were, in the deck. But now with Drifloon having to be utilized to deal those real big damage with that fantastic Balloon Blast attack, which is 30 times the number of damage counters on itself.
And what's interesting with the new format for Gardevoir is it doesn't need as many energy cards, where we saw the old Gardevoir list had to really reach to, was it like 14 energy cards with like the reversal energies?
Yeah, sometimes it can
13,
be.
12.
Yeah, it's a mixture. It's a mixture. I mean, now we're down to just 9. And that's plentiful enough for being able to take the right knockouts, as we do see a routes come down as well. So not the Drifloon yet. Do see the other fantastic A-Spec in Fabien's hand as well. That Hero's Cape is just hanging around there.
Is that the first time we've seen it on stream today?
I would like to believe so.
I assume so. I haven't quite caught all of the A-Specs, but we've now seen 5 different A-Specs on stream. Hero's Cape working really well in Gardevoir EX, and also a great card in Snorlax. But here it's able to increase that Scream Tail's damage output, and that will be 120 damage on the screen tail. So taking that knockout on the active Iron Hands, 240 damage, and we'll be able to sit in that active spot.
Yeah, massive KO there. And just being able to increase it, well, initially to 190 HP to begin with. And then, of course, with the Psychic Embrace, it's just ramping up that damage counters on itself to really ramp up its attack. And it's a great way, great little combo piece. Is now susceptible to things like Lost Vacuum, though.
Very true, yeah. Lost Vacuum, one of the most powerful cards in the current format, the only way to get rid of tool cards. And so any of these decks that are reliant on tool cards to put them out of range, we see it with the Hero's Cape, we see it with Bravery Charm, we see it with Ancient Booster, Energy Capsule. And if you're able to remove those whilst you're attacking, you can put stuff that was before out of range now back into range.
Yeah, fortunately for Fabien, in this type of deck that Scott is piloting, typically wouldn't run a Lost Vacuum. So we do just see the attachment of the Lightning Energy to the Miraidon in the active spot. A fantastic addition to the deck as well. Another opportunity to also disrupt Fabien's hand down to 2.
Very good.
It's a pretty good turn so far. Just whether Scott can continue riding out some of those attacks, as Peak Acceleration will be dealing 80 damage here and taking the knockout and hopefully powering up another Iron Hands EX.
Yeah, just 2 cards in hand for Fabien. And that's not going to be a huge amount here to be able to formulate the next attack. You do have the Energy Acceleration on board, but there is no attacker right now that can be used to take out any of the bench Pokemon. That attacker just got removed from play. So we'll have to find a different way, maybe via the Miraidon to try and remove it from play and then get one of those 2 prizes on the next turn.
Yeah, a bit of an important decision here from Fabien. With only 2 cards in hand following that Iono, it's going to be really important what he's going to be able to promote. What are those 2 cards? We'll try and figure it out as just a double check of what's going on with the judges. But, you know, it was a good turn from Scott and what you'd expect, being able to sort of take the knockout with the Miraidon and then be able to power up an Iron Hands EX as well.
Yeah, so we'll just make sure this is all good here. The amazing judges here at EUIC. You know, as these events get bigger, we're having to find more and more people who can judge, and so many in the community doing a great job here. And we are blessed with the table judges, and they are just making sure everything's all right. And there's something that a lot of people don't necessarily understand until they come to an event. The judges aren't there to catch you out. The judges are there to make sure that everything is fine. A lot of time people just ask questions, judge comes over, everything's fine. So it's very rare that there is particularly big issues on the tables.
No, and it's a lot of credit to all the volunteers and the judges that sort of help support and run these events as well. It's a massive shout out to just make sure that they can, again, keep on top of things so that we can also have as much information as possible to share with everyone on home at the stream, or on the stream, sorry. But yeah, we'll just get that all clarified and make sure it's all good before we continue. Of course, some of the viewers of the stream itself can also pick some things up, and we're also very thankful to some of those who maybe have seen something, pick some stuff up, and that's why
on rare occasions we spot them as well.
Yeah.
No, but the judges tend to be the best bet at spotting everything, and this has turned into quite the interesting end game scenario here. That INO down to 2 was really going to disrupt the Gardevoir because the Curlier was taken out on a previous turn, so there is no draw on board except for the Greninja. Not much energy in deck, so you're unlikely to see that. So those 3 cards that will be seen by Fabien, it's going to have to be very lucky in a way, like really hoping for the best in those final moments.
Yeah, it's just whether Fabien's really been able to sort of burst through the deck well enough yet. I feel like there's probably still quite a bit to go through. Hasn't seen as much. I mean, did have double Curlier around after turn 1. So was able to start utilizing Refinement and some of the Greninja draw as well. And that's where you kind of just whittle it down to start setting up your board to the best possible state so that if you do get disrupted or if they do get knocked out or do you have to evolve them up, you try and limit what an Iono could do to you.
I mean, we saw it in the first game of the stream. Something like Ancient Box, their way of dealing with Ionos is just to get rid of their whole deck, except for what they need, which they then put back in with a Power Pad and a Super Rod. And Gardevoir used to be so good at doing that, setting up the strong board state. And we are back into the game here. They've resolved the issue on the table, and it will just be Greninja, there's an Ino in hand as well, just trying to find a good attacker here to stabilize the board.
Yeah, it just was the routes being promoted to the active spot. There is a Curlier on board as well, so the refinement looks like it has been used as we come back to the game. So that's why Fabien does have some additional cards. Arven being utilized now. And what will Fabien go for? So many different cute little options here in the deck. It's just finding the right one.
Yeah, I'm intrigued as to the game plan here. You know, the Gardevoir EX seemed like a really good part of the deck. I mean, there's the prize cards right now are in favor of Scott, so Scott is still going to be able to utilize counter catchers, where for Fabien he's not going to be able to. So the Ultra Ball coming out here, and I mean, this is the whole fun of this tournament, is we're trying to work out how these decks play. So watching some of these best players pilot the new way to play Gardevoir, the new way to play Arceus Giratina, or whatever it is, we're getting to find out how they run now.
Yeah, and that's the amazing thing. We get to do this alongside everyone watching the streams at home or at this event as well. And it's just so much intrigue in terms of how Fabien could play out to get these final 2 prizes. He's staring down at a Miraidon in the active spot right now. You know, wants to be trying to take out one of those big hitters on the bench that Scott has.
So what's the plan here? Interesting. You've got a bit of time as well. 3 prizes remaining for Scott, so there's a little bit of time. And we'll just be retreating into the routes and using that memory skip.
A great attack, but in this scenario, just trying to slow down Scott's board. Little memory skip, I guess, would have chosen peak acceleration as the attack to not be able to be utilized on Scott's turn. But did Fabien just need one more additional turn, maybe just to kind of start getting the board ready?
I think
for
so.
One big final KO?
Seems that way. Just need a little bit more processing time just to try and get in the best position possible. That Mew EX, fun little inclusion into the Iron Hands, wasn't there in the earliest formation of the decks that we saw, but has been added in as a little bit of extra draw towards the end of the game.
Yeah, what's really cool is even with things like Heavy Baton, so obviously a tool that's utilized with the Iron Hands EX, so if it has a retreat cost of exactly 4 and knocked out from damage from an opponent's attack, move up to 3 energies from that Pokemon to one of your bench Pokemon any way you like. That actually opens up the Mew EX as a potential attacker as well, which is kind of cute. As we do see, just double checking from both players, making sure they can follow exactly what's going on here. And it looks like it's going to be a Mew restart.
Yeah, just discarding with that Techno Radar. Another great part
still
of the Mew EX is the synergy that you do have some cards that discard.
Maybe wants to try and find Iono to try and maybe combat some of those combo pieces. Has it picked it up at all?
Does have the Arven, so we'll be able to retreat and formulate an attack here. But then that would leave a 2-prizer in the active.
Is this the turn to do it, is the question. There's an Arven being played now. What has Fabien been able to try and navigate in his hand from that turn that he's just had with the memory skip? This is all kind of maybe the additional turn Fabien needs to build the last combo pieces with a Curlier and the Greninja available to continue going through the deck.
Yeah, so if we look at the arm press of that Iron Hands will be doing 160 plus 20 plus 20, so that's 200. And with a future booster energy capsule, that would be 220. And that Gardevoir is just out of range with that current damage modification. Would need another Iron Crown to be able to knock out the Gardevoir EX that's currently on board. And it'd still only be 2 prize cards. But there we see the electric generator and getting some energy this time.
Yep, so able to maximize the value from that electric generator. One going to each of the Iron Hands EXs on the bench. This is it from Scott. I mean, it looks like he's going to try and send up the Iron Hands EX for a big attack here. The biggest aspect is whether Fabien is able to find a response with the attack of his own after an amp you very much there with 1 prize final for Scott.
Well, counter catcher would get it here onto that Mew EX because of the Gardevoir EX being able to hit for 190. So the Mew EX now a liability in play, and the Drifloon's there anyway. So attach that Bravery Charm to the Drifloon. Enough energy available to take the knockout on the Iron Hands. And that will be game here for Fabien.
Perfect damage, 240 damage he'll be dealing because of the H damage counters on it. more than enough to take the knockout on the Iron Hands EX. 10 damage additional over to 230 HP it has, and Fabien will be taking game 1 of round 5 at EUIC 2024.
Just a slow start there for Iron Hands, meaning it wasn't able to get the energy in play needed. You saw how powerful it can be towards the end game once the Iron Hands are powered up. And we'll just see if Scott can try and reset into this next one, get a Miraidon attack off early, and start swinging. But Fabien started with Klefki, the dream start in this matchup. So, you know, things could very easily change going into game 2.
Yeah, still plenty of time available for this Swiss round 5, as we do get a chance to recap ourselves what's happened in that game 1. Bit of a slow start for Scott after those prizes there. And then it was swinging away by Fabien with that God of EX and utilizing Screamtail. All of the attackers that were in Fabien's deck was kind of utilized to great effect.
Yeah, it's almost like a box deck now of psychic attackers that work with that God of EX. And there we saw the Curlier being removed from play. That was almost a huge turn there, because when that Ino for down to 2 hit, Fabien was struggling to draw but found their way out of it. And the back and forth eventually fell in Fabien's favor.
Yeah, great uses of those additional HP boosting tool cards as well. That Bravery Charm and that fantastic ace spec that we've just seen now, that Hero's Cape coming into play and really sort of helping Fabien stretch over the damage HP to overcome Scott's Pokemon.
Tool cards in the format right now could be some of the most powerful parts of every deck. Increasing HP, increasing power, retaining energy, you know, everything about the format revolves around these tool cards. Also ace specs, also draw engines, and those prize cards seem to show a little bit of those too.
Yeah, not ideal here from Fabien's side of the board. Double Curlier being prized will hurt that sort of consistency of the deck. Prime Catcher from Scott's side is going to be a bit annoying to work with, as well as we do kick things off for this game 2 of this round 5 here. And Scott once again going first.
So the Flutter main start this time. An amazing start in a lot of matches, but not this particular one, as the only ability that we see from Scott is really going to be on the bench with that Iron Crown. I guess the EUIC as well, the restart, but again, typically on the bench. Flutter main only affecting the active.
With that Midnight Fluttering ability. Very well called there. We still see the Nest Ball for that Miraidon onto the bench. Looks like now it's just a pass over after that Nest Ball, so Fabien does get a chance to, again, do his due diligence, work out what's been prized, what's available for him. That Buddy Buddy Poffin will now allow him to get out some of those routes that are available, and maybe look to utilize Flutter main as the Klefki in this game, where it could just evolve up to maybe some of those Curliers that aren't prized.
I'm intrigued to see whether we get a Klefki into the active. Is it possible? There is an energy, so it would be possible. That could be a great way to reduce the speed at which Scott bursts through the Gardevoir deck.
Just thinking about Fabien's deck, Fabien's Gardevoir deck here, bench space is definitely really quite vital to manage because of the different sort of disruptive Pokemon like the Flutter main, or the Klefki, or the Mimikyu if it does suddenly come down as well, and then the Radiant Greninja for draw. It's very much a very different build to how we've seen Gardevoir in formats past.
And that Technical Machine Evolution was theorized to be part of previous Gardevoir lists, but is so important in this format where you need to be able to get set up quickly. And in this particular deck, it allows you to evolve into those Curlier a few turns earlier than you would normally expect, and then you can evolve them the next turn straight away. So no rare candies appearing in the list, allowing you to just go up through that Technical Machine Evolution.
Yeah, choosing the 2 of the routes which don't have the memory skip attack as well, leaving that as an option later if Scott is able to maybe utilize something like an Ampy very much, or even that peak acceleration attack from the Miraidon, and just kind of giving himself another additional turn. We saw how vital it was at times to be able to do so, as an Arven is played down here by Scott.
Can we just take a moment to appreciate Arven? Arven is a key part of so many top decks currently. You know, Charizard EX playing 3 or 4 of them. The Iron Hands relying so heavily on Arven in those early turns to get that Miraidon attack off. We just saw how important it was for Fabien here. Arven has really come in so key into all these decks just because of that tool card
Yeah.
being a big part of most of these decks. If you can find tools off of it, you can find your bull search with Buddy Buddy Poffin. It's changed the way these setup decks work completely.
Yeah, Arvin has come in clutch with a lot of decks sort of in the previous format and this one, of course. You know, I think when it first came out, it wasn't the most utilized supporter because it was only kind of grabbing some of those seal stones to kind of support it. But Forest Seal Stone is a great card. Being able to grab an Arvin to then Forest Seal for any card you'd like, incredible, right? But now with all these ace specs as tool cards and all of these like support tool cards that you also get from the ancient box decks and the future box decks, it just gives it a great opportunity here to be able to do so. And we just did get confirmation that, of course, the Iron Crown does increase the damage output because it's just the active Pokemon where the ability is shut down by Fluttermane.
But only one Iron Hand's in play here. So if that Screen Tail can be set up by Fabien, a knockout on the benched Iron Hands could completely disrupt Scott's plans. And we'll see what Fabien can pull off here. Lots of draws still available, some great cards in hand. It's now on Fabien to try and answer that early setup turn for Scott.
Yeah, maximum of those 2 refinements, and maybe that Nestball could grab a Radiant Greninja as well. I don't believe that was prized. So that's going to be the draw power available to Fabien, as there is an Arvin from his own side of the board here. Maybe eyeing up exactly what you're calling out there, Mike. A potential to retaliate. If he has a Nestball and the Irvin Vessel, that's an instant draw, another 2 cards.
Was it prize? Was the Screen Tail maybe prize? Is that why?
Oh.
Maybe that's completely changed this turn.
Yeah, that's definitely an option there. We do take the Bravery Charm and the Earthen Vessel.
Oh, that is a tough prize to have in this situation.
Alongside 2 Curliers as well.
That would be the dream attacker right now.
Yeah, not ideal to always utilize the Drifloon. It's one of those kind of, again, closers in the deck to be able to take massive damage knockouts. We see the Airy teched in to the Gardevoir list as well.
Not particularly useful in this matchup. Very few items sticking around in Scott's hand that are actually worth getting out of the hand. But this is the stage where we look to see what the plan is. Drifloon plus Counter Catcher could maybe the strategy here, but that Iron Hands is the only threat on the board, the only thing that can take a knockout here. That Miraidon, you're not too fussed about it.
No, not at all. So we do see the second refinement here as well. Ultra Ball being eyed up for that Gardevoir EX as it evolves up and now is capable to utilize Psychic Embrace. Wonder which direction Fabien would look to try and go for here. We didn't get a chance to really see which card Scott took from the prizes there from the first knockout, as the Drifloon also hits the bench now. Could we see it happen again?
Well, I think I saw a Counter Catcher in Fabien's hand. Plenty of energy has been discarded. So this Drifloon should be able to reach the damage output required. Counter Catcher, Iron Hands, 3 lightning energy attached to it. So this will completely slow down Scott's game plan as the 4 energy are attached. Not so much about the energy, it's that 8 damage counters times 30, which will do 240 damage to that Iron Hands, taking a huge knockout.
And the double curly is taken from the prizes as well. So draw power will continue to be utilized from Fabien's side of the board here, as Scott just has the Miraidon in the active spot. There's the Iron Hands, 1 turn too late, unfortunately. Energy attachment there as well with an Arvin played once again. No disruption available.
They're just checking some things out here again. And this is the stage where Scott needs to stabilize again. Game 1, we saw how scary it was with Iron Hands in the late game, a stable board state and an Iono. But as you mentioned, the Curliers, you know, if there's 4 Curlier on board, the Iono is not going to scratch the Gardevoir deck's plan. So Fabien in a much stronger position this time, and that Arvin will really try and bring all the best options to the table as we see that Mew EX come down again as a potential extra attacker in the matchup.
Yeah, mainly utilized for that fantastic restart ability, able to draw your hand up to 3. Right now, down to 2. 1's a tool card that's being placed in the Iron Hands EX as well. That final card, is it playable to restart for more, or is it just a restart for additional 2 cards here?
I mean, maybe knocking out the Curlier is more important at this stage than the Drifloon. I wonder what the strategy here is going to be. Yeah, going for that Curlier will And the advantage of the Mew is you can free retreat back into whatever you want.
Yeah, another great just sort of ability of the Mew EX having free retreat cost as well, so it can just maneuver around as he just goes straight back into the Miraidon here, and that peak acceleration will be taking the knockout, trying to slow down Fabien's board, but just not for him to know that 2 Curlies were taken from the prizes last turn.
Yeah, those were the dream prize cards, weren't they?
Pretty ideal.
Especially with the Drifloon being able to just go back into the active and take another knockout. And at this stage, it's going to be, can you find the gust option you need to take out this next Iron Hands? There is a heavy baton on it. Where would that go, though? That's the other question, you know.
Yep.
There's not another Iron Hands to send it to, and it's still another 2 prize knockout. So huge turn here for Fabien if they can find the boss.
Yeah, just the 1 boss available in the deck. Does play free counter catcher, but of course that is not activated or live right now because of the equal prizes that are remaining for both players. So Fabien, how are you going to navigate this turn? Won't be a boss this turn. Drifloon in the active spot will be just swinging away, it feels like, at the active Miraidon, unless Fabien, unfortunately, without access to something like that Screamtail, can't really try and take out something else.
So this is sort of that swing turn for Scott. We mentioned about how the Gardevoir deck doesn't dig as deep through the deck early on as it used to. So Fabien not able to get exactly what they need in these mid-game to end-game turns. And instead, we'll have to just try and stabilize the board to be able to get a knockout next turn, potentially.
Yeah, so what's the best way of dealing with this right now? Is there ever a world where you pass and then you're just kind of focusing on 2 prize knockouts?
Maybe retreat into the Gardevoir EX and knock out with that instead.
Makes it a little bit more difficult. Mimikyu has come down now. Opportunity to, again, just to buy turns, right? Because then if Scott does take a knockout in some way, shape, or form, all those counter catches are live once again, and you can just kind of keep swinging. But yeah, it looks like you're right. The direction is going into the Gardevoir EX. Love it. Absolutely love it.
Fabien, a great player. Great minds think alike.
Any opportunity for you to say that, no?
I mean, it is out of range there, right? With 250 hit points.
Yep, so right now Arm Press doing 220, have a baton currently on it, so isn't able to utilize that other fantastic tool that usually it might use to kind of further boost up the damage output, Future Booster Energy Capsule, not just giving it no retreat, but does allow future Pokemon to deal an extra 20 damage as well. So even with an extra Iron Crown EX, not enough.
And that Mew EX now in play, so a Gardevoir EX could take a knockout on the Mew. And like you said, with the prize cards, the counter catchers are super key in this matchup, both sides relying on counter catchers on those key turns. And so now that knockout from Fabien does activate the potential for a counter catcher from Scott.
Just a grab of another Iron Hands EX there from that fantastic item that we get a chance to use, Techno Radar. Another great future consistency card.
Well, you know, all of the evolving decks got Buddy Buddy Poffin, where the Battle VIP pass was gone. And for the future decks, they had Techno Radar already.
Counter catcher available as well, targeting the other Curlier now. Free retreat from the Mew EX after a restart for 1. Great little spot he finds himself in, because this will be another 2 prizes taken. Fabien can't take 3 prizes in 1 turn. Baton available on that Iron Hands EX. Could power up the second one. He's in a good spot, Mike. He's in a good spot.
Very strong, yeah. Heavy Baton is such a key tool in this matchup. I think a lot of people really like the Lost Vacuum in the format. Now, one of the biggest matchups is this one. If you can Lost Vacuum the Heavy Baton away, you often just win the game there and then, as it just retains so much energy in play for Iron Hands, and you can quickly power up the next one with maybe just 1 attachment.
There's a Professor's Research as well, just pitching away that Iono. A couple of Techno Radars, good energies. I mean, just keep swinging away that Future Booster Capsule as well to kind of just have another pivot free retreat. I mean, has the Mew, so maybe not as important right now.
Could be useful for the damage output maybe on the other Iron Hands. We'll see, we'll see.
Yeah, Scott's the one player in this deck as another Techno Radar hits the discard, or 2, I should say, after pitching 1 away.
Thin that deck down.
Thinning is winning.
Especially with Aheno about.
It's just a Miraidon going to hand now. It's going to be focusing on those Iron Hands EX, I'd like to think. Try and utilize those to steal away those final 4 prizes from those little non-EX or non-V Pokemon.
I love how Scott has been targeting down the Curlier. Really shows the quality of a player when they start taking out the draw engine. It can be so key in those final turns. Once the Ino does hit, you've taken away their only ways out of the situation.
Final 2 prizes remaining for Scott there. Scott will be eyeing up those single prizes on the bench from Fabien's sides. Will there be a way from Fabien to retaliate? Is there a way to deal with the heavy baton? I can't quite see one right now, but it does mean Scott would have to find something like the boss's orders.
I mean, is the Mimikyu the plan here? Do you put the Mimikyu in the active and just say, you can't knock anything out?
Yep.
I guess the Mew EX would eventually get powered up.
Or just enough turns to wait for the boss, I guess.
Yeah, there is some lists without boss, but on this occasion there's 2 boss. One was discarded earlier.
Yep, that's very true.
So if you saw 1 boss discarded, you might think, oh, you know, Iron Hands only ever plays 1. So you might be looking to get away with that.
Countercatcher does have the Scream Tail that was taken off the prizes. It looks like as well can start trying to utilize that as an attacker with something else trapped.
Ooh, the Professor Turo's scenario. A great card to be able to reset the tool, reset the damage, reset the energy, discarding all of those off the board, and then you've got that energy back for another attacker, and it's going to be the Scream Tail just looking to try and disrupt in these final turns, and that's where holding on to a Future Boost energy capsule can be key in these final moments.
Yeah, and there's the big knockout there as well, because it's not in the active spot. Doesn't activate the heavy baton, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, wow.
So something there we just had to pick up on because of that Scream Tail just being able to stick 120 damage on itself with that Hero's Cape and advantage Fabien here.
Oh, it's a back and forth game here.
What can Scott string together? We'll need to hit 2 big generators.
I mean, what's the plan here? You've just attached to the Iron Hands. So now you can't use that Miraidon attack. So you're hoping to hit the generators, and that's going to be it. You know, I guess your thought is if I take the knockout on the Scream Tail, you'll just be able to return the knockout next turn anyway. So you have to hit the amp you very much here.
Yeah, is there a way, is there a world where that Iron Hands EX could gust up that Gardevoir for the final 2 prizes and arm press?
I think
it's 80 damage on it now.
That's true. With 3 Iron Crowns in play, that would be enough, yeah. So the gust onto the Gardevoir EX plus 2 energy would be enough.
Doesn't look like the boss is in hand, though. Another energy in Iono, so Iono being played.
Is this to literally find those generators, right? That's, I guess, a counter catcher plus a generator.
2 cards. I would have seen it instantly slammed, surely, but has he used Restart yet? The heavy ball being played now. Iron Crown EX is a card that could be taken, but is it necessary?
I guess you want the more draw with the Mew, right? Final moments here for Scott, really trying to find the dream combo. It's going to be tough to do, but off the Mew EX, drawing 2, needs a generator, and doesn't hit it. That's a boss and an energy. And that Scream Tail on board with the Hero's Cape is just going to be too much for Scott.
Yeah, and it's just a pass over it. Well, I think discussing it, it's just a pass over to Fabien. And Fabien could target down any Pokemon on Scott's side. And Fabien will be taking round 5 here at EUIC 2024. Fantastic play, fantastic pilot of Gardevoir EX once again.
Everyone thought Gardevoir EX was gone, but a lot of the top players have come out here and have shown us that you can revamp the deck, put in those disruptive cards. There's so many good psychic attackers that can work synergistically with the Gardevoir EX. And I think the real MVP there was that Scream Tail, showing that you can not only disrupt what's in the active.
But it'll be interesting to find out what you guys at home also think of the matchups and the decks going forward as well. But yeah, just a little bit of confirmation for you guys. We do have just at the lower thirds, just down below there, just to kind of support what we just mentioned. But a ruling has been applied. Unfortunately, there was an infraction in game 1, which meant that the match loss has gone to Fabien, and Scott is elected. But I think we have the final little message there. Scott is elected to concede game 3, and Fabien takes the win. Kudos to Scott if that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the situation was, I think the players have finished the game, and sometimes as a player, when you feel like you're already done, you're ready to just move on. And I think at that stage, Scott was like, "Look, it's fair. You beat me. It was just a small mistake, and I think I'll give it over to you." And that's one of the beauties of the fair play of Pokemon.
Yeah, and I've seen and known Scott for quite some time. It's great to see him back in the game again. And like I said, a lot of kudos to Scott for just kind of recognizing, well, it was probably in a losing position, and that small additional error or infraction just kind of meant that it won't really impact the ending outcome. So he's been able to choose to concede the final game. I'm sorry, I did kind of hype up that we might be going back to a game 3, and interesting to see God